The SCULPFUN S9 is a diode-based laser engraver with a work area of 410 by 420 millimeters. The S9 builds on the previous generation S6 engraver and features a 5.5 watt laser, fixed focus for easier adjustment, as well as a circular cover on the end of the laser's head to help with filtering UV light. You will still want to be sure you're wearing appropriate laser safety glasses when operating the machine. The machine is constructed of aluminum extrusions that come with easy to follow assembly instructions that should have you up and running in about 30 minutes. The S9 is running GRBL firmware and is compatible with LightBurn. In this video, we'll go through the process of getting the SCULPFUN S9 set up with LightBurn on Windows as well as Mac, and we'll go through a short tutorial project. This project will help you get familiar with LightBurn and show the process of running a job on a machine without limit switches. Timestamps will be in the description below so that you can skip around as needed. The first thing you'll need to do is download the driver for the SCULPFUN S9, and for this it's the fairly common CH340 driver that's used by a lot of different diode lasers. We have a link to this in our documentation, but I'll also place a link in the description of this video to this direct downloads page to make sure that you are downloading the correct thing. For Windows, there's only one option, and you will need to click on the Download Windows CH340 driver, which will download a zip file. Once the zip file has been downloaded, you'll need to extract that file. To do so, just open up the folder that it's been downloaded in, which is typically your downloads folder, and then right-click on the zip file and select Extract All. It'll let you choose where you want to extract it, but the default location is the same location as the zip file itself. Once extracted, it'll open up another window that will have the executable file to install the CH340 driver, so we'll need to double-click that to open up the driver installation window. On this window, all that you need to do is select Install. There's only one driver option, so you don't need to make any changes. It should be fairly quick, and once the install is complete, you'll get a pop-up just saying that the driver install has succeeded, and you are ready to move on to the next step. With the driver installed, we can plug the power cable into our machine, followed by the included USB cable. One side should go into the machine and the other should go into your computer. And then we can power on the SCULPFUN S9. You'll know it's powered on because the heatsink fan will kick on, and you should also see a LED on the top of the laser as well. Now we're ready to head over and install LightBurn. Now that we've got the machine powered on and plugged in, we're ready to download LightBurn. To do that, you'll need to head over to the download page on our website and scroll down to where you'll see a couple of different options. For Windows, there's a 64-bit version as well as a 32-bit version. Most modern computers are going to be running the 64-bit version of Windows, but if you want to confirm this, you can easily do so by mousing over the Start menu and clicking on the Start menu and then typing in SYS or System, which will pull up the System Information app. And when you click on that, it'll open up a window that will contain a lot of information about your specific computer as well as the type of operating system it's running. And as you can see here next to system type, mine says 64, so I know that I'm running a 64-bit system, and yours will also tell you if yours is 64 or again 32-bit. Now that we have that information, we can head back over to the downloads page and select the correct version. Again, I have a 64-bit version of Windows, so I'm going to be choosing the 64-bit version of LightBurn. When you select that, it will open up a window to allow you to save the LightBurn installer, which will then go ahead and download. And once it's done downloading, if you click on it, that will launch the LightBurn installer window. Once the installer pops up, it will guide you through the entire installation process. There's no special steps here, and you're just going to be installing it like you would any other program on your computer. If you just select Next for all of the different options, that will get you to where you need to be. On the final window of the installer, you'll see a couple of different options. You can ignore these. The FTDI driver is specifically for larger DSP machines and not a diode laser. So at this window, if we click Finish, it will launch up LightBurn. The first time LightBurn starts, you'll be greeted by the device window and will need to add a device. As you see in the device list, it's blank, which is expected. We need to then add the SCULPFUN S9. And to do this, we'll start off by heading down to the Find My Laser option, which will open up the Find My Laser dialog window. This window will scan our computer to see if it detects any lasers that are connected. At this point, again, the laser should be connected via USB to your computer as well as powered on. Once you've confirmed that that's the case, click Next, and it will take a brief moment as it scans the system to see if it detects our machine, and it did. We can see here that we've got a GRBL machine that's got a work area of 410 by 400 millimeters on COM port 4, as well as that it is connected via serial and USB, and it is a G-code type machine. If for some reason it doesn't detect your machine, I'd recommend confirming that you installed the driver that we covered earlier in the video, as well as restarting your computer. The other thing to try is power cycling your machine and then unplugging and plugging in the USB cable once again, because it should detect your machine. When you do see your device pop up, you can head down to the Add Device button and select that to go through the rest of the setup process. The first window is going to ask you to name your machine, and this is especially important if you've got multiple machines to be able to easily identify which one you're selecting. In this case, I only have one SCULPFUN S9, so I'm just going to go ahead and name this device the SCULPFUN S9. You'll also want to confirm the work area of the machine. The 410 by 400 is read directly off of the controller, and that's what I recommend leaving it at. There is a slightly larger value for the work area listed on SCULPFUN's product page, and I did confirm that you can get a few more millimeters if you really want to, but with the 410 by 400, you don't have any risk of accidentally having the head run into the extrusion, so again, it's just a safe place to keep those values at. The next window will ask you where the origin is for your laser, which should be the front left. It should automatically choose that for you, but if not, for the SCULPFUN S9, you will want to select the front left, and that's the case for just about all G-code based machines. And then for the auto home your laser on startup, it does have that unchecked, which is what we want. That's only something you'd want enabled if you have a machine with end stops, but in the case of the S9, it does not and would cause issues if it was enabled. So leaving the values how they are, which is front left and disabled for the auto home, is going to be correct. The final window is just a summary of all the different settings that we chose, just to confirm that everything still looks correct, which it does, so we can select Finish. And now in our device list, we've got the SCULPFUN S9, which is what we want to see, and it says that it is a GRBL-based machine. At this point, we can select OK in this window to close out of the device window, and if everything has gone correctly in the laser window on the bottom right, you should now see the status Ready listed. Also, if you look at the console window, you can see that LightBurn has read some values off of the controller. If at some point you open LightBurn and see that the laser status doesn't read ready, but it says disconnect and the machine is powered on and plugged in, it's very possible that your computer has assigned it a different COM port. And so to check this, if we go down in that same laser window, next to where it says devices, there will be a drop down where we can see all of the different active COM ports on our computer. Currently, I only have COM 4, that's my laser that's plugged in, but if you have multiple options, it's a good idea to try the different COM ports and see if you're able to reconnect to your laser. Before we do anything else, we need to install the CH340 driver, which is the most common driver used for a lot of diode lasers. We have a link to this in our official documentation, but I'll also place a link to this direct page so that way you can make sure that you download the correct thing. On this page, if you scroll down, there is a section for Macintosh. I recommend going with the direct download link. Currently, as of recording, the version 1.5 is going to be the latest, and clicking on that will download the package file. Once you've saved it and it's downloaded, clicking on it will open up the installer, which will guide you through the rest of the process. Just go ahead and install this like you would any other program on your computer. It's a fairly quick process, and it likely will have you enter in your user password. Once it's installed, you might get this warning or notification that a system extension was blocked. That's fine. You can just click OK on this window. The main thing you want to see is that it says that it was successful, the installation on the primary window. And once that's done, before doing anything else, there's a restart button because you will want to restart your Mac. Now that we've got the driver installed, you can take your included power cable and plug it into your machine, as well as the included USB cable. One end will need to go into the SCULPFUN S9, and the other end should be going into your Mac. And we'll also need to power on the machine by flipping the little rocker switch. You'll know that the machine is powered on because the heatsink fan will kick on, and you'll see a little LED on top of the laser. Next, we're ready to download and install LightBurn. To do this, we'll need to head over to the downloads page on the official LightBurn website and scroll down to the area where there are some different download options. For us, we're going to be going with the macOS version, and clicking on the macOS version link will download the package file. That will then need to save. Once it's completed downloading, click on the downloaded file. Then we'll need to drag the LightBurn icon into the applications folder, which will install LightBurn. The first time that you try to run LightBurn, you'll get a notification pop up saying that LightBurn can't be opened because Apple cannot check it for malicious software. This is expected, and all we'll need to do at this point is click the Show in Finder option. This will open up a Finder window with all of our applications where we'll need to scroll down to where we see LightBurn and right-click on LightBurn, and then choose Open. When you click Open, you'll get another pop-up window that has a similar warning to the one that we previously saw, but now we'll have the ability to open the software. Clicking on Open will let LightBurn start up like normally, and this is only going to happen the first time that you run it. After this, you can now start it from your Launchpad, and this will only happen, again, the first time you install LightBurn, or if you update LightBurn to a newer version. The first time you open up LightBurn, you'll be greeted by this device window, and under the device list, you'll see that it's blank, which is to be expected. We haven't added anything yet, and the first thing we'll need to do is add our SCULPFUN S9. To do this, we'll head down to the Find My Laser button and select that, which will open up the device discovery wizard. And at this point, if you follow the steps, you should have your machine both powered on and plugged into your computer, which is necessary for this device discovery wizard to be able to find your laser. Clicking next, it's going to scan your computer to see if it detects any machines connected to it. It might take a second, but if all goes well, you should see your machine listed. If for some reason you don't see your device listed, then make sure you did install the driver that we covered earlier. I would also recommend powering on and off your machine, unplugging and plugging in the USB cable again, and restarting LightBurn. As you can see, LightBurn did detect our machine, and it was able to read some information off of it, that it is running GRBL firmware with a work envelope of 410 by 400 millimeters, and also that it is a G-code type machine connected via serial and USB. Once you see your device listed here, you can go down to click Add Device, which will take you through the rest of the setup. This page is going to ask you to name your device. This is especially important if you've got multiple machines that you're running. Since I've only got one SCULPFUN S9, I'm going to just name it the actual model number, which again is the SCULPFUN S9. As far as the dimensions or the work area, the 410 by 400 is read directly off of the controller. On the SCULPFUN website, they do have a slightly larger work envelope listed, and I did confirm that you can squeeze a few more millimeters out of both the X and Y, but to be safe and to prevent your laser's head from bumping into the extrusions, I recommend starting off with the 410 by 400. The next page is going to ask where the origin is for the laser, which should be the front left, and it should have that marked actually. If for some reason it doesn't, then just select the front left. That's the case for this machine, and that's primarily where it is for most of the G-code based machines. Also, there's an option for auto home your laser on startup. That's only something that you want checked if your machine has end stops. In the case of the S9, it does not, so you'll want to make sure that you leave it unchecked or red, which is what it should be by default based off of the parameters it read off of your controller just a moment ago. Once you've confirmed those two things, you can click Next. The final window contains a summary of all of the different settings we've chosen up until now. It's a good idea to just quickly browse through these, but everything here looks great, and we can go ahead and select Finish. Now in our device list, we have the SCULPFUN S9 listed, and it says it is a GRBL based machine, and we can click OK. In my experience on Macs, it's going to say disconnected when you are done with the process. All that you're going to have to do is close LightBurn and quickly reopen LightBurn, and it should automatically connect to your machine. As you can see here, now in the laser window, it says ready. And if we look up at the console, we can actually see that LightBurn has read quite a bit of information off of the controller. LightBurn's typically going to reconnect to your machine every time you open up LightBurn as long as it's powered on and plugged in, but if for some reason it says disconnect, it's a good idea to go down to where it says devices in that laser window and select the drop-down menu. And as you can see here, there's a couple of different options for COM ports. I have the correct one selected, which is the USB serial 1340, but if you have multiple options, you can click on those and see if that will reconnect to your machine. You also will want to, when you choose one of these different devices, close out of LightBurn and then reopen it just like we did a moment ago, so that way it can connect to your device. Next, we're going to run through a small sample project engraving some text. This will teach you some of the basic tools within LightBurn, as well as get you familiar with the workflow of using LightBurn. There are a couple of different ways within LightBurn to position your laser head and to tell LightBurn how you want to run a job. The three methods are absolute coordinates, current position, as well as user origin. We're not going to cover all of these in this video, but we will in a separate video. Specifically, in today's video and project, we're going to be looking at the absolute coordinates, which is the best for beginners and the easiest to understand. I'll place links in the description to this documentation, but I think that our documentation does a great job of explaining it, and it states that the page grid you see in the main editing window represents your machine's work area. Anything you place in that area will be cut on its corresponding place on your machine. So essentially, what you see is what you get. If you place something in the center of your workspace, you can expect that it's going to be engraving in the center of your machine. In the example image here, as well as in our workspace within LightBurn, we'll see a red and a green square on the bottom left corner if we have absolute coordinates selected. And the green square represents the job origin, and the red square represents the machine origin, and that is where we are going to want to have our laser head before we start our job. On a machine with end stops, it would automatically home to the front left, so you wouldn't have to do it yourself. But for a machine like the SCULPFUN S9, it's still a very simple process, and we'll just need to manually move the head of the laser to the front left using our hand before we power on the machine. This is something that we'll cover in a moment here, so don't worry about doing it yet. We'll start off by heading over to our S9 and powering off the machine, and then we'll need to grab whatever it is we're going to be engraving. I'm using a really thin piece of balsa project wood, but it doesn't matter. Whatever you're using, it is fine, and you'll start by placing it somewhere in your workspace. Next, grab the head of the laser and drag it over your material before grabbing the included measurement tool. We'll need to loosen the two thumb screws located on the back side of the laser so that way we can slide it up and down, and then place that measurement tool under the heatsink, making sure that the head of the laser, the heatsink portion, is rested on the top of that piece. Once done, use one hand to hold the head of the laser in place and your other hand to reach behind and tighten those two thumb screws. This is to set the correct focal distance for this material. Once the head of the laser has been secured, you can remove that measurement tool. Since we're going to be using the absolute coordinates like we discussed, we'll need to grab the head of the laser and move it all the way to the front left of the machine, making sure it butts up against the frame. The last step is just to power on our S9, and then we can hop over to LightBurn and start our design. Absolute coordinates should be the default value for the start from in LightBurn. If for some reason it's not, just head over to the start from section in the laser window, click the drop down, and then choose absolute to switch over to absolute coordinates. Now, as you can see on the bottom left of the workspace, we have that green and red square. The first tool we're going to use for our project is the text tool, and we'll get to that by going over to the left toolbar and clicking on the icon of the letter A. You'll know it's activated because the A will turn red. With the text tool active, we'll head back over to our workspace and click somewhere in the center to see the text cursor pop up, where we can then enter whatever word it is we want to engrave. I'm going to go ahead and engrave the word LightBurn. To get out of the text tool and back to the select tool, which is the default mouse cursor, we can either go to the top left option on that toolbar, or we can hit escape to exit out of the current text we're typing, and escape one more time to get back to that select tool. Now that we've got something in our workspace, if we head up to the top right cuts and layers window, we'll see that we have a layer there. And there's quite a bit of information here. This corresponds to a specific layer, which is going to be anything on our workspace that has been generated with the color black. We can see that the mode is set to fill mode. The speed is set to 2000, which is 2000 millimeters a minute. The power is set to 20%. And on the bottom of that window, we've got the ability to adjust a couple of different settings like speed, power, how many passes we'd like, as well as the interval. If your mode isn't set to line mode, we're going to go ahead and do that. We just need to click where it says fill next to the color in the layer, which will open up the drop down where we can select line. Now we're going to head over to the preview window, and to get there, we'll head up to the top toolbar and we'll click on the icon that looks like a computer monitor, which when you do that, will pop up the preview dialog window. In this window, we can see what the output of our current job will be. All of the items in black are the actual portions that will be engraved, and the thin red lines going between each of your letters are just showing the machine's travel movements. You can hit play on the bottom right, which will actually show you what the path is that the laser will take. And you can click and drag the timer back and forth to sort of quickly scrub through all of the engraving. This is a really good place to get in the habit of checking before you're running a job, just to confirm that what you think is going to be happening is the correct output and what LightBurn is actually going to be running. Next, we're going to play around with the style of our text. You'll need to make sure it's selected by clicking on it, and you'll know it's selected because you will see moving squiggly lines. And once it is selected, if you look up in the top toolbar, you'll have some options to configure or customize your text. You've got a font dropdown, height, the horizontal spacing, vertical spacing, the ability to make everything uppercase, bold, or italicized. Go ahead and go through the font menu and find a font that you like. As you're scrubbing through the different fonts, you can see it update in real time, which is a really nice way to make sure you like a font or that it's going to go with a specific project. When you're happy with a font, go ahead and click that to confirm and make the change to your text. If at some point when you're designing you do something that you're just not happy with, it's really easy to undo. There is both a undo arrow as well as a redo arrow in the top toolbar, and you can also use the shortcut on your keyboard, Ctrl-Z, to undo your last action. Next, we're going to change this layer from line to fill by heading up to the Cuts and Layers window, clicking the drop-down under Mode, and selecting the Fill option. Once we've done that, we'll head back over to the preview window we were just at a moment ago to see what changes that made. As you can see now by the text in all black, it is going to be filling in the entirety of the text and not just doing an outline like the line mode. And if you click the play button, you can see the path that the laser is going to take as it travels back and forth, filling in each of the letters. Now we're going to add an outline to our text, and we are going to do this using the Offset tool. To activate the Offset tool, we'll head over to the left toolbar and click on the Offset tool, which is the O roughly center of the toolbar, which will open up the Offset dialog window. In this window, we'll have the ability to control quite a few different things, like the direction of the outline. Do we want it to be outward, inward, both? We also have a few different options for the corner style, and we can choose the offset distance. There's not a right or wrong here, so just play around and select something that you're happy with. I'm going to go ahead and choose the round corner style with the offset distance of 3. And as far as the offset distance goes, you can change it by typing in the text box. You can also use the arrows on the right side of that text box. And if you mouse over the text box and you use the scroll wheel on your mouse, you can actually scrub up and down to really quickly adjust the offset distance size. Once you've found something that you're happy with, go ahead and click OK to apply the outline. Now we want to make sure that just the outline is selected. If you have the inner text selected, hit Escape on the keyboard, which will deselect it, and then click on the outline to make it active. You'll know it's active based off of those dashed moving lines. With the outline selected, head down to the colored toolbar on the very bottom and choose a different color from the color palette to change the outline. As you can see now, it's blue. And in the top right Cuts and Layers window, we still have our black fill layer for the text, but the outline is blue and it has been assigned a line layer, which is exactly what we want. The letters of our text will be filled in, and then there will be just a single line that will make up the outline when we run our engraving. Next, we're going to adjust the power and speed, starting with the fill layer. We'll need to click on it to make it active, and then in the bottom of that window where it shows speed and power, we can make these changes. These settings are going to vary heavily based off of whether you're using a different material, if you're not using wood, or again, if you're using a completely different laser altogether. But I'm going to be starting off with a speed of 5,000 millimeters per minute and the power set to 50% for the fill layer. And for the line layer, clicking it to make it active, I'm going to run that a bit slower because I would like it to be darker than that fill layer. So I will go with 2,000 millimeters per minute on the speed with a power of 35%. One last time, go up to the preview window to take a look and make sure everything looks correct. You should see the fill happening first, followed by the outline. The goal of this is just to sort of build those good habits from the beginning. You will never be upset that you checked the preview window, but you will be upset if you didn't check the preview window and there's an artifact that somehow damages whatever you're planning on engraving. So this is a really good thing to do every time to just make sure you are giving yourself the best chance at success. Now it's time to get our workpiece positioned that we're going to be engraving. We're first going to activate the ability to fire the laser from within LightBurn. This is just going to be used to help us with more accurately positioning the laser. To do this, we'll head up to the device settings, which is the wrench icon in the top toolbar, and clicking that will open up a dialog window. What we're looking for is the setting that's labeled Enable Laser Fire Button, which is disabled by default. Clicking it will enable it. You'll know it's enabled because the swatch will turn green, and we can click OK to exit out of this menu. This won't take into effect until we've restarted LightBurn, so we will quickly need to do that. When you go to exit out of LightBurn, make sure that you save your project so that way we don't lose all of our progress and that you can quickly reopen it when we do open up LightBurn in just a moment. Now that we've restarted LightBurn, if we go under File and Recent Projects, we can just click the project that we closed a moment ago, which will load all of our settings. And if we head over to the Move window, which will be right next to the Cuts and Layers window, we will see that there is a Power text box and a Fire button now available. I recommend setting this to just roughly 1%. Our goal here isn't to cut anything. We just want to be able to click the Fire button to activate the laser, so that way we can really make sure that we've got things lined up correctly. As you can see here, pressing the fire button turns the laser on, and pressing it again will turn the laser off. Now it's time to run framing to help us align our material with the correct area it's going to be engraving. In the laser window, if we click the square framing icon, the head of the laser will move from the front left corner it's currently at to the area it's going to be running the engraving, and it will do an outline of the entire area that your engraving will be inside. The process here is to run the framing command, see where it moves, and then move your piece of material until it is completely underneath it for the entirety of the framing. If your material is too small, you can always resize your text, but you want to make sure that your material is large enough for the entire frame to be on top of it. Since we enabled LightBurn earlier to turn on our laser, if we hold down the Shift key on our keyboard and click the square framing command, it'll run the command again, but this time the laser will be on. And this is my final step in order to really hone in the positioning of where the engraving is going to be. Once you're happy, all that's left to do is to hit the start button and the job will start to run. While the laser is running, you'll want to be close by, and it's never recommended to leave a job going while the machine is unattended. If you notice that the text isn't quite as dark as you would like it, or it's too dark, you can always go back and adjust both the speed and the power settings in the Cuts and Layers window that we covered earlier. After a few minutes, you should be greeted with your finished engraving, and this has been a great first step in learning your machine, learning a bit about LightBurn and the workflow of designing something and getting a job to run, as well as aligning your material. And the next steps I'd recommend would be to take a look at the official LightBurn documentation, go over and join the LightBurn forums, as well as check out the many other tutorial videos we have over on our YouTube channel. I'll place links down below in the description to all of the resources mentioned. If you're a machine manufacturer and would like us to make a video like this about your machine, please contact us at business@lightburnsoftware.com.